The Spitfire glided through Earth's upper atmosphere with grace and silence. Its surface still pulsed with the same soft glow that had guided it through the rift. Theo sat calmly in the cockpit, still wearing the remains of the armor. His thoughts were quiet, but his purpose was clear. Isla sat beside him, watching the blue curve of the planet appear beneath them. The sun was just rising, casting golden light over the clouds below. The world looked peaceful, but both of them knew it was only the surface that felt calm. "The rift is closed," Isla said, "but the continuum still has pieces left on Earth." Theo nodded. "That our mission is not over yet." They flew lower, following a hidden flight path toward a remote airfield far from any city. Below them, the base appeared surrounded by forest and covered in thick morning fog. The landing was smooth and silent. The aircraft responded to every movement as if it were alive. Waiting at the edge of the runway was Claire, along with two members of the original research team. She stepped forward slowly, unsure of what she was seeing. The Spitfire no longer looked like a machine from the past. Its form had changed slightly. Its wings now held a sharper shape, and its body gave off a faint hum that vibrated in the air. Theo and Ayla climbed down from the cockpit. Claire stared at them, then at the plane behind them. "Is it done?" she asked. "Did you go where Crane once went?" Theo answered without hesitation. "Yes, and we stopped them. But there is more we must do here." Inside the base, they gathered the remaining files, the scans, and the last copy of Alistair Crane's notebook. They worked quickly, organizing the information for one final report, a full history of Project Osprey, the truth about the alien technology, the nature of the rift, and the reason why so many powerful people had tried to hide it. Theo recorded a message using the base's old BROADCAST equipment. A short but powerful statement to the world. For decades, the truth was buried beneath fear and silence. A pilot named Alistair Crane gave up his name to protect Earth from a threat beyond time. Today we confirm that story is real. The skies are not empty, but they are safe for now, thanks to what he left behind and what we chose to finish. The broadcast was not sent through public channels. Instead, it was shared directly with trusted military officials, scientists, and independent researchers across the world. Some believed it right away, others questioned it. But one thing was certain: the world would never be the same again. After the broadcast, Theo and Isla returned to the hangar. The Spitfire waited quietly. The blue glow had faded slightly, but the aircraft still seemed to breathe with hidden energy. "This plane cannot remain here," Isla said. "It carries knowledge that must be protected." Theo nodded. "We will return it where it came from, somewhere safe, somewhere it can sleep until it is needed again." Together, they flew it back to the same field in Kent where it had first been discovered. They landed it near the ruins of the barn and covered it once again with a special shield designed to hide its energy signature. A stone marker was placed nearby with no name and no symbol, just a message carved in steel. In silence we guarded. In silence we remained. Ayla looked at the field one last time. "Do you think he would be proud?" she asked. Theo smiled. He did not ask for pride, he only wanted someone to keep the promise. The two of them walked away from the site, ready to disappear again, just like Alistair had done long ago. In the weeks that followed, strange events began to fade. Quiet arrests were made in high places, important files were uncovered and investigated. The names on Isla's list were slowly removed from positions of power. The influence of the continuum began to break apart. One morning, a message arrived for Theo from Peter Halbrook, the old man who had served with Alistair back in the war. His letter was short but meaningful. "I watched the sky last night, and I felt peace again. Tell your pilot he flew well." Theo placed the letter inside the notebook and locked it away in a safe deep underground. He no longer needed to search for answers because he had lived them. The Spitfire remained untouched in the hidden field, waiting not as a weapon but as a witness to a history that few would ever know. Far above the Earth, the rift remained sealed, its light no longer visible in the sky. But deep within its forgotten corners, a quiet presence waited, watching knowing that it had been stopped once, and that it could be stopped again because now the world had its guardians. They did not wear medals, they did not fly for glory. They flew for truth, for peace, and for the promise left behind by one man who once disappeared from history and became part of something far greater. As the wind moved over the Kent hills, the silence returned once more, not empty but full of what had been seen, what had been fought, and what had finally been won. The Spitfire glided through a tunnel of light. A strange silence filled the air around Theo and Isla. No wind, no sound. Just a steady pull forward as if the universe itself was guiding them. Outside the cockpit, the world had changed. There were no stars or clouds, just layers of color flowing like a river in the sky, red, blue, silver. They shifted without shape and yet felt alive. Theo looked at Isla. She stared ahead calmly. Her hand rested on the glowing control panel. "This is the rift," she said. "It is not space, it is not time. It is the space between both, a place where truth cannot hide." The controls moved on their own. Theo felt the Spitfire respond to his thoughts. He did not push buttons or turn levers. He just thought of direction. And the aircraft followed. Suddenly, a bright flash appeared ahead. A floating structure made of light and metal. A station hanging in the rift, like an island in the sky. The plane slowed as if it had been expected. They landed gently on a platform that formed below them. The Spitfire powered down, but the core still glowed. Theo and Isla stepped out onto the strange surface. It was warm beneath their feet and shimmered like glass. Shapes moved within the walls of the station, but they were not human. Forms of light drifted across the edges, watching silently. Walked forward until they reached a central chamber. A sphere hovered in the center, showing images from Earth wars, famine, riots. The same patterns repeating through history. "This place was built by the ones who tried to warn us," Isla said. "They left messages, maps, and tools. They knew the enemy would return again and again, always wearing new faces." The sphere shifted and showed Alistair Crane inside the same chamber. He was older in this vision, eyes focused, posture strong. He placed his hand on a panel and left behind a final message. "I could not destroy it," his voice said, "but I built a weapon that can find it, follow it, and fight it. If you hear this, you must finish the flight I started. The gate must be closed from the inside." The image faded. Theo looked at Isla. What weapon was he talking about? Is it the plane? She shook her head. "Not just the plane. The pilot and the plane must become one. It is not just a vehicle. It is a living tool, and now it has chosen you." The floor beneath them opened slowly. A new chamber rose from below, holding a set of armor smooth and shaped like the outer shell of the Spitfire. It pulsed with the same energy as the core. "The Spitfire needs a pilot, not just to fly it, but to merge with it," Isla said. This was Alistair's final gift. A way to fight inside the rift, using thought, not force. Theo stepped forward. The armor responded to his presence. Opening with a quiet hum, it wrapped around him, slowly fitting his body without pain. The moment it locked in place, the world changed. He could see energy lines running through the station. He could hear the hum of the rift like a heartbeat. He felt connected not only to the ship but to the entire structure around him. Isla activated the platform again, and the Spitfire returned to the dock. Its surface now glowed brighter. It was no longer just a restored plane. It had evolved. The continuum will follow, she said. They know we are here. They fear the weapon waking again. Suddenly alarms rang through the station. Lights shifted to deep red. The outer edge of the rift began to tear. A dark ship pushed through, its shape twisted and sharp like a wound in space. Theo climbed into the cockpit. The armor connected to the ship instantly. It moved before he gave it a command. Every thought became action. Every movement became precision. The enemy vessel released small crafts, dark and silent. They flew without sound, but each one carried energy that cracked the space around them. The Spitfire launched into the sky. Its engines now powered by the core, not by fuel. It twisted through the rift with speed and grace. It fired beams of light that cut through the enemy drones clean and fast. Theo felt the Spitfire responding to the enemy's energy. It adapted to each attack. It read the patterns before they arrived. The bond between pilot and plane was complete. The dark ship opened and released a wave of energy. Theo flew straight into it, trusting the ship completely. The core absorbed the attack and reflected it back with force. The shockwave tore through the enemy ranks. Isla guided him from the station, watching the battle unfold on a glowing panel. "You must strike the heart of the ship," she said. "Only then will it close the gate for good." Theo locked onto the ship's center, a sphere of darkness surrounded by rings of red energy. He flew straight toward it. The Spitfire folded its wings and became a single line of light. The enemy fired again, but the armor protected him. The core pulsed stronger with each second. The light around the Spitfire grew brighter. Theo thought of Alistair. He thought of the message left behind. He knew this was what the pilot had prepared for. This was the mission not of war, but of protection. Spitfire broke through the enemy shell and struck the core. The explosion did not sound like thunder. It sounded like wind being pulled away, a silence so deep it shook the rift. The enemy ship folded into itself and vanished. The rift began to close slowly. The colors dimmed. The lights faded. Theo flew back to the station. The Spitfire powered down gently like a bird landing after a long flight. He stepped out of the cockpit. The armor loosened and fell away softly. Isla walked toward him with a calm smile. "You did it," she said. "The gate is closing and they cannot follow anymore." Theo looked at the rift one last time. "The weapon is ready now," he said. "If they return, so will I." They returned to the Spitfire and guided it back toward Earth. Below the clouds, the sun was rising once again, but this time the sky felt like it truly belonged to them. The hidden chamber beneath the city felt like a place frozen in time. Ancient metal walls stood around Theo and Isla, glowing with quiet energy. Symbols marked the ceiling like stars in the sky. Each one pointed to a different path through something Alistair Crane had once called the rift. Theo held the notebook close as he followed Isla deeper into the chamber. She lit the path with her device, which responded to the markings around them. It was clear that this place had been built long before either of them was born. "This map shows more than just space," Isla said. "It shows doors, places where the fabric between Earth and the rift is thin. If the continuum finds even one of them, they will return." Theo looked at her. "Are they really already here on Earth?" Isla nodded. "They never left, they just learned how to hide." She walked to a console in the wall and placed her ring on a flat surface. A soft light filled the room, and a new screen appeared on the wall. It showed files and recordings. Some were old black and white footage. Others looked like modern surveillance. Faces appeared. Names appeared. People in high offices, people in science labs, people in defense agencies. Some of them had eyes that glowed for only a second in the footage. "They took positions of power," Isla said. "They feed on fear, war, and confusion. Wherever there is conflict, they grow stronger. That is why the world keeps falling into crisis after crisis." Theo stepped back from the screen. His hands were shaking slightly. "This is bigger than anything I imagined," he said. "How do we fight something that controls so much already?" Isla looked at the broken wing of the Spitfire resting in the center of the room. "We do not fight them with guns or armies," she said. "We fight them by finishing what Alistair started." Theo understood what she meant. The Spitfire was more than a machine. It was a message, a weapon, a key. It had crossed into the rift and come back. And it had survived. They had to reawaken it. That night they returned to the RAF base, where the rest of the Spitfire had been stored. Theo used his clearance badge, and Isla moved with silent steps like someone who had done this before inside the hangar. The aircraft still sat under heavy guard, but the energy around it had changed. Theo could feel it. It was like the plane was aware that its time had come again. They reached the cockpit and opened the panel behind the seat. The core was still there. Glowing quietly, Isla reached into her bag and pulled out the same ring she had used in the chamber. She pressed it against the core. Nothing happened at first. Then the lights in the hangar flickered. The air grew warm. A low hum filled the space, and The core began to spin slowly. The cockpit lights turned on by themselves. The plane's surface glowed faintly. Engineers and guards came running but stopped at the door. The aircraft was floating slightly off the ground. The wheels no longer touched the floor. One of the guards reached for his radio, but it cracked and sparked. The energy from the core blocked all signals. Claire entered the hangar and stared at the plane in shock. "What is happening?" she asked. Theo turned to her. "It is waking up and we need to take it before they shut us down." Claire looked confused, but then she noticed Isla's ring. The same symbol was on the notebook and on the strange panel inside the cockpit. She had seen those symbols before in the deleted scans. She made a quick decision. "I will unlock the gate to the runway," she said. "You have 10 minutes before the base locks down." Theo and Isla climbed into the cockpit. The screens came alive. Symbols ran across the dashboard, but Theo could somehow read them. The machine was sharing its knowledge, just like it had done for Alistair. The hangar doors opened. The Spitfire lifted into the air without using the propeller. It moved forward like a bird finding the wind again. Outside on the runway, the night was calm. Theo guided the controls. The plane responded before he even touched anything. It knew where to go. Suddenly lights appeared in the sky. Black drones with red lights circled above them. They were fast and silent. They belonged to the Continuum. The first drone fired, but the Spitfire twisted in the air, avoiding the attack with ease. Theo felt the plane move like it had its own thoughts. It turned sharply, dived under the drone, then rose again with perfect control. Isla touched a symbol on the panel. A burst of light fired from the wing, a beam that cut through the drone in seconds. It fell from the sky without sound. More drones moved in, but the Spitfire danced between them. The core glowed brighter with each move. The machine had been built for this kind of fight. It had not forgotten. Inside the cockpit, Theo saw flashes of another sky. The rift was calling again. The same paths Alistair had drawn were opening ahead. They escaped the final drone and rose high above. The cloud stars stretched out in every direction. A strange light appeared in front of them, a gate made of shifting lines and energy. The same one drawn in the notebook. Theo looked at Isla. She nodded. "It is time. We have to go in, find what he left behind, and finish what was started." They flew into the light together. The Spitfire vanished without a trace. The sky was quiet once more, but far below in the city the fire vanished without a trace. Continuum knew what had happened, and they were preparing to follow. Rain tapped gently against the windows of Theo Marlowe's apartment as he sat in his study surrounded by papers and diagrams. His mind was racing with questions. The notebook left behind by Alistair Crane was filled with flight paths, symbols, and phrases that pointed to something beyond this world. Theo had barely slept in 2 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the strange figure from the old photograph, the one standing beside Alistair, the one with glowing eyes and no name. As he leaned back in his chair, he heard a soft knock at the door, not loud, just enough to be noticed. He looked at the clock. It was past midnight. No one should be visiting at this hour. He walked to the door and opened it cautiously. A woman stood there wearing a dark coat and holding a leather bag. Her eyes were steady and calm. Her voice was quiet but clear. "My name is Isla Crane," she said. "I am the granddaughter of Alistair Crane." Theo froze. He had searched for family records but found nothing. No trace of any living relatives, yet here she was standing in front of him like a ghost from the past. He stepped aside and let her in. Isla looked around the room. Her eyes landed on the open notebook and the scattered documents. "You found it," she said. "The truth he tried to protect." Theo nodded slowly. "You said you are his granddaughter, but I found no record of Alistair having a family. No marriage, no children." She placed her bag on the table and opened it. Inside were old photographs, military patches, and a small metal badge with strange symbols. "He was ordered to erase everything," she said. "After the war they told him to disappear. His mission had changed. He was no longer a soldier. He became something else." Theo listened as Isla began to explain the real story behind Project Osprey. During World War II, a small group of pilots and scientists had discovered a signal. A sound from deep space that was not natural. It repeated a pattern, a warning. They followed the signal to its source and found something buried under the ice in Norway. An ancient machine built by a race not from Earth. Alistair had been one of the first to touch the machine. It changed him, not in body but in mind. He began to understand things he had never studied. His flying became faster, sharper, almost impossible to follow. The Spitfire he flew was rebuilt using parts from the alien device. It was designed to enter something they called the Rift, a fold in space that led to another realm. A place between stars. A place where something waited. Theo asked quietly. What was waiting on the other side? Isla looked at him with serious eyes. A predator not made of flesh but of thought. It feeds on conflict, pain, and fear. It found Earth during the war and began to grow stronger through the violence. She continued. The alien race that built the machine wanted to stop it. They could not fight it directly, but they could help others stand against it. That is why they left the gate behind. Alistair flew through the rift many times. Each time he learned more. Each time he came back changed. Eventually the government shut down Project Osprey. They feared what they did not control. They ordered Alistair to destroy the evidence, but he refused. He flew one last mission and vanished. Theo sat back in silence. The weight of the story pressed on his chest. If this was true, then the war was only part of a larger battle, one that was still hidden from the world. He looked at Isla. Why? Now why tell me this? She opened a small box and placed it on the table. Inside was a ring with the same glowing lines as the Spitfire's core. Because they know you found the plane, she said, and they are coming for it. Theo stood up. Who are they? They call themselves the Continuum, Isla replied. They are not alien, and they are not human. They are something in between, a shadow born from war. They want the gate reopened. They want the world to burn again. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The apartment grew cold. Isla looked toward the window. They found us. Theo moved quickly. He grabbed the notebook, the hard drives, and the photo evidence. Isla pulled out a small device that looked like a flashlight, but pulsed with light in strange patterns. We have to leave now, she said. They ran down the stairs as a black vehicle pulled up outside. Men in dark suits stepped out, moving without speaking. Their eyes were blank like mirrors, reflecting only silence. Theo and Isla escaped through the alley at the back of the building. They ran under the rain through empty streets until they reached an old garage. Isla opened a hidden door inside and led Theo into an underground tunnel. This was one of Alistair's safe paths, she said. He built it in case they ever returned. Inside the tunnel, the air was still and heavy. Theo could hear the humming of something deep underground, a sound that matched the core of the Spitfire. At the end of the tunnel, they reached a hidden chamber. There in the center was another part of the old aircraft, a wing section with fresh markings, glowing softly in the dark. Isla touched the surface and the lights in the chamber responded. They rose like waves and revealed maps written across the walls, paths through space marked with symbols and warnings. This is what he left for us, Isla whispered. Instructions on how to fight back. Theo stared at the maps. He felt something shift inside him, a sense of purpose. A feeling that this was not the end of the journey, but the beginning. Outside in the distance, the city lights flickered again. A new storm was coming. Not from the sky, but from beyond. And now they were no longer just historians and pilots. They were the last line standing between Earth and something ancient waiting to rise again. The air inside the RAF research facility was cold and silent. The hangar lights buzzed softly above as Dr. Theo Marlowe stood beside the Spitfire. Its surface gleamed under the white lights as if it had just been built yesterday. Not a single part of the aircraft had rusted or worn out, despite being buried for nearly 80 years. Claire stood beside him holding a small scanning tablet. She was one of the lead engineers assigned to examine the wreck. We scanned the metal again this morning, she said in a quiet voice. It does not match anything on Earth. The surface is harder than titanium, but lighter than aluminum. It has no reaction to heat, pressure, or magnetic force. Theo nodded as he stepped closer to the engine bay. The metal felt Smooth and strangely warm beneath his fingers, he could hear the faint hum again. The same sound he had noticed when he first found the glowing core behind the pilot. Seated inside the cockpit, the controls looked mostly normal to anyone unfamiliar with World War II aircraft. But Theo had studied these planes for years, and he knew that several buttons and switches did not belong there. Some controls had labels written in English, but the words were strange and did not match any known aviation terms. He carefully opened the panel behind the seat where the glowing core had been discovered. It still pulsed with a soft blue light like a heartbeat. Claire leaned in beside him with the tablet. "This is the power core we tried to remove earlier," she said, "but every time we touched it the tool stopped working. Completely shut off, like the power was drained." Theo stared at the small device. It looked like a smooth metal sphere no bigger than a fist with thin glowing lines running across its surface. He reached out but stopped just before touching it again. "Did you run a composition scan on this?" he asked. Claire nodded. "It is not on the periodic table. It has no radioactive signature, no heat emission, and no weight as far as we can tell. It is just there." They stepped back and reviewed the scan data together. The readings made no sense. The energy output was too high for such a small object. It was stable yet unreadable, alive yet quiet. Later that day, Theo met with the base commander. In a private office, he explained what they had found and showed him the photos, the notes, and the strange control panel. The commander frowned as he looked through the evidence. He was an older man with tired eyes and a sharp mind. "I served in the Air Force for 30 years, he said. "I have seen secret weapons, black projects, and experimental aircraft, but this is something else entirely." Theo nodded. "I believe this Spitfire was modified with non-human technology, the markings under the wings, the energy core, the pilot's strange disappearances. It all fits together." The commander leaned back in his chair. "If this is true, then someone very powerful wanted it hidden, and they still do." Theo handed him the photo of Alistair Crane standing next to the mysterious figure with glowing eyes. The commander's expression changed. His fingers tightened around the picture. "This man beside Crane, I have seen him before. Not in person, but in a file that was destroyed years ago. It came from a group called Project Osprey. They were active during the war, but their records vanished shortly after." "Do you think this was part of that project?" Theo asked. The commander nodded slowly. "Yes, and if so, then this is not just a Spitfire. It is a warning." That night, Theo returned to the hangar alone. He sat beside the plane in silence, thinking about everything. The warnings, the silence in the records, the email telling him to stop. He looked at the cockpit again. His eyes fell on a small latch under the main panel, something he had missed before. He opened it and found a folded map and a notebook with Alistair Crane's name written on the cover. Theo opened the notebook. The pages were filled with strange diagrams and flight paths, lines showing curves that no Earth aircraft could follow, speeds that would tear a normal plane apart. Notes written in a mix of English and symbols he did not understand. One sentence was repeated across several pages. "Sky is not empty. The sky is not ours." Suddenly, the hangar lights flickered. Theo stood up quickly. His heart began to race. He looked around but saw no one. Then he heard a low mechanical noise. A small drone flew through the open hangar doors and hovered in front of him. Its camera lens focused on Theo for a moment. Then it turned and flew away, disappearing into the dark. Theo ran outside, but the drone was gone. He looked around the base, but no one else had seen it. The next morning, Claire reported that some of the scan files had been deleted. Overnight, the backups were corrupted, and the photos of the energy core were gone from every system. Theo felt the pressure growing. Someone was watching. Someone did not want the truth uncovered, but he was not ready to stop. He returned to the notebook and scanned each page by hand, making digital copies on a private device. He studied every word, every diagram, every symbol. One sketch stood out. It showed the Spitfire flying straight upward, then vanishing through a large circle drawn in the sky. Around the circle were more symbols, and the words "gate, not Earth, not time." Theo finally understood what Alistair had written. The plane was not just modified, it was a key, a vessel built to cross something unseen, a gate between places, and if that gate still existed, then something else might be trying to come through. Theo Marlowe sat alone in his study, the photo of the cockpit message open on his laptop. The words stayed in his mind like a whisper. Not of Earth, not of time. It sounded like science fiction, but he knew what he saw. The aircraft was not normal. It was not just a war relic, it was something more. Something lost. Or maybe something hidden on purpose. He closed his laptop and opened the RAF pilot archive on his tablet. He searched again for Squadron Leader Alistair Crane. The file appeared with a simple black and white photo of a plane in the sky. No photos of Crane himself. No record of his birth. No family background. The mission report from 1943 was the only solid piece of data. It read that Crane disappeared during a flight over northern France. The radio signal was lost mid-air. His wingman reported a sudden flash of blue light before Crane's plane vanished. There was no sign of crash debris, no funeral. The case had been marked closed after 1 year. Theo checked the names of Crane's squadmates. Most had passed away years ago, but one name stood out. Peter Halbrook, age 98, living in a care home in Sussex. He had been Alistair's close friend according to the notes. Theo made a decision. The next morning, he drove across the country to visit Peter. The care home was quiet and warm. Peter sat near the window in a wheelchair, wrapped in a gray sweater, his hands shaking slightly as he held a book. His eyes were tired, but they still held a sharp light. Theo introduced himself and showed his ID. Peter looked at the badge then. At Theo's face. "You're here about Alistair, aren't you?" Peter asked in a soft voice. Theo nodded. "I found his plane. It was buried in Kent, still whole, still strange. And I need to know who he really was." Peter was silent for a long time. Then he gave a slow nod. "I always knew someone would come one day." "Sit down. This is a story no one wanted to hear." "Not then. Not now." Theo sat beside him and listened. "I flew with Alistair only twice. He was not like the rest of us. He never joked. He never missed a shot. The others thought he was lucky. I thought he was hiding something. He used to go missing for days between missions, then return with new parts on his plane, parts none of us had ever seen. The higher officers never questioned it." Theo leaned in closer. "Did he ever speak of where he got them?" Peter nodded slowly. "One night I asked him. He looked at me and said, 'I serve something older than kings and quieter than bombs.' I thought it was nonsense. But then I saw his plane fly straight up into the clouds at an angle no Spitfire should manage. It vanished like smoke." Theo sat back in his chair. His heart beat faster. Did anyone else see it? Peter gave a sad smile. "We all saw things, but the world was at war. No one had time for strange stories. And then he disappeared, just like that. And we were told to forget him." Theo thanked Peter and promised to return. As he walked out of the care home, he noticed a black van parked across the street. It was not there when he arrived. A man inside was holding a camera. Theo stared at him. The man looked away that night. Theo returned to the research site. The wreckage had been moved to a nearby RAF base. He showed his pass and entered the hangar. The Spitfire sat under bright lights. Engineers walked around it, scanning and checking. But no one had touched the small energy core behind the cockpit seat. Claire greeted him with a worried look. Something strange happened during the scan. The plane blocked our radar. Every time we tried to map the inside, the screen went blank. Then our main generator failed for 10 minutes. It's like the plane is aware. Theo stepped up to the cockpit and looked inside. He touched the carved message again. Not of Earth, not of time. It felt colder now. Claire handed him a folder. Also, we found something behind one of the control panels. A sealed pouch with An old photo and a note. Theo opened the pouch. Inside was a photo of Alistair Crane, a young man with sharp eyes, dressed in a pilot suit. Standing next to him was someone strange. A figure dressed in dark robes, eyes glowing faintly. The note was handwritten in tight letters, as if they find this, they will erase me. Remember me not as a soldier, but as a guardian. I flew beyond Earth. I saw what hides in the stars. Do not trust the silence. It is a lie. Theo felt a chill run through his spine. He placed the note back and closed the pouch. Someone had tried very hard to erase Alistair Crane. But why later that night, Theo received an email. No subject, no name, just one line: stop digging, or you'll be next. He looked around the empty lab. He felt watched, but he was not afraid. He had already crossed the line. And now there was no turning back. Alistair Crane was not a forgotten pilot. He was something else, and someone powerful wanted the world to never know the truth. The sun was just beginning to rise over the rolling hills of Kent, England. Golden light stretched across the fields, touching the broken walls of an old barn that had stood for nearly 100 years. The wooden beams were cracked, the roof long gone, and the earth beneath had begun to swallow the remains. Dr. Theo Marlowe stepped out of the dusty Land Rover and looked around. A tall man in his 40s with calm eyes and a mind that never rested. He had worked for years as a military tech analyst. He was not the kind of person who got excited easily. But something about the call he had received 2 days ago had stayed in his thoughts. An old farmer had reported strange metal parts found under the barn ruins. He had said it looked like part of a plane. At first, no one cared. But when a local historian checked the area, he found something shocking. The serial number on the metal piece matched a Spitfire from World War II. Not just any Spitfire. This one had belonged to a forgotten pilot named Alistair Crane. Theo joined the research team already at the site. There were 6 others: historians, engineers, and 2 young interns. They had already started digging carefully around the site. The air was dry, and the ground cracked open easily. After just a few hours of work, the full body of the plane began to reveal itself. The shape of the Spitfire was clear. Its wings were nearly untouched, buried under layers of earth. The cockpit was closed but not locked. The glass had not shattered. And there was no rust, none at all. The plane looked like it had been placed there yesterday. "This can't be right," said one of the engineers. "This thing is over 80 years old. It should be falling apart." Theo walked closer. He knelt down and ran his hand over the wing. The surface was smooth. There were small dents and scratches, but the metal felt strange, almost warm. And there were markings under the wing that didn't belong there. Strange lines, curved symbols, and what looked like glowing paint that had faded with time. He took a deep breath and stood up. "We need to document everything," he said. "No guesses, just facts." The team set up cameras and began scanning the wreck. One intern took notes while another used a drone to take pictures from above. As they worked, Theo climbed into the cockpit. The seat was covered in dust, but the controls were all there. Everything looked standard until he saw the control panel. It had more than the usual buttons. In fact, it had some switches and dials Theo had never seen before. One screen was set into the panel, dark and cracked. It was far too modern for a World War II plane. He looked closer. The writing on the buttons was in English, but some words made no sense. Theo opened a small panel under the dashboard. Inside, he found something even stranger. A small box, humming faintly with energy. It gave off a soft blue glow. He reached out to touch it, but stopped. A message was scratched into the metal plate above it. Not of Earth, not of time. Theo stared at the words. They were written in English, clear and deep, like someone had carved them slowly and carefully. He pulled out his phone and took a photo. He climbed out of the cockpit and called over the rest of the team. They all stared at the box in silence. One of the engineers, a woman named Claire, stepped back. "This isn't just a plane," she said quietly. "Something's wrong here." By the end of the day, the entire wreck had been uncovered. The Spitfire looked whole. Its propeller was damaged, but the rest of the body was strong and untouched by time. Theo took photos of the strange markings under the wings. They didn't match any language known on Earth. One of the interns searched online for the serial number. He found it, listed in old RAF records. The plane had belonged to Squadron Leader Alistair Crane, and according to the files, he had disappeared during a mission over France in 1943. No body was ever found. No wreck was ever recovered. The file had been marked "Closed Missing In." Action. Theo frowned as he read through the file. Alistair Crane was listed as a top pilot. 20 confirmed kills. Special training. Known for strange flight patterns that no one else could copy. Some reports even called his flying style inhuman. But there were no photos of him, no letters, no family records. How does someone so important just vanish from history? Theo asked aloud. No one had an answer. That night, the team packed up and left the site under guard. The RAF had been informed. The plane would be moved to a secure facility in the morning. But Theo could not sleep. He sat in his tent, staring at the photo of the words carved into the cockpit. Not of Earth, not of time. Something was hidden here. Not just an old plane, but a secret buried for decades. A secret someone wanted forgotten, and Theo had a feeling that this was only the beginning.